Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Ashley DeLucia, and I am an assessment consultant here at Riverside Insights. And today we are working with Indiana schools and districts. So I will be your host for today's webinar, along with Ms. Bronwyn Kotarski. She's going to be handling our slides, and Mr. Trent Paxson from one of the districts here in Indiana. So thank you for everyone that's here joining us. I appreciate it. Next slide. All right, so our discussion today is going to focus on the strategies and best practices with ensuring your students are ready for algebra so they can successfully complete the course and graduate high school in Indiana. We also want students to be confident in math, so we will talk about that as well. So we are very excited, like I said, to have Mr. Trent Paxson from the J School Corporation joining us here today, as well as a few other colleagues. Before I introduce them, I do have a few announcements to share. Next slide. Okay, so during today's session, you may have questions that you would like one of us to answer. Okay, we certainly welcome those questions. So, but we ask that you please just type those into the Q&A panel on the right side of your screen. It will look something like this in the image shown here on the left. We will be sure to answer your questions as the topic arises during today's discussion. There are a few handouts as well included with today's session, and those are located right here under the handout triangle in the right side panel. So be sure that you download those during today's webinar. Also, today's session is being recorded, so you will receive the recording as well as a copy of the slides and handouts and a certificate of attendance in the next day or two. So be on the lookout for that in your email inbox. We also have recordings of other Riverside Insights webinars that can be found on our website at info.riversideinsights.com/K12PD. So please be sure to go and check out all of the resources that we have there. There is a plethora. So in opening this page right down here, provides you with the header shown here. So you can access it right there. All right, next slide. Okay. Okay, so I want to highlight something. Our upcoming webinar that we have is, we would like for you to join us. It's on Thursday, February 22nd, so it's coming up for our next webinar. So just a little preview of what we have in store, featuring Rachel Dobney from Dublin City Schools in Ohio, so your neighbor. So Rachel will be sharing about a data-driven process to equitably identify students who are gifted and talented and discuss the approach their districts take to meet their students' needs. The link to register, so be sure to do this, for this webinar is in the chat. So we'll have that posted there for you. All right, and now on to today's presentation and discussion. Next slide. All right, here's the man of the hour. We are thrilled to have with us today Mr. Trent Paxson. He is the Assistant Superintendent for Instruction from the J School Corporation in Portland, Indiana. So Trent, I'll let you introduce yourself and to our audience before we continue.
Hey, a little background about J School Corporation. We're located in East Central Indiana. It's located about an hour south of Fort Wayne, hour north of Richmond is where we're located at, all rural district. We have 5 elementaries, 3 are K6, and one's a 3-6, one is a K2. And then we have a high school that's 7 through 12. So that's kind of our statistics about J schools. And our population is just under 3,000 students that we have, and it's a county-wide school district. And so that kind of gives you a brief overview of what our population is like and what our student population and our actual city. We have about 4,000 is our county seat. So it's just a rural, totally rural area.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Trent. That's great. All right. So also, I want to welcome any and all administrators throughout Indiana that are joining us today, as well as anyone else. We appreciate you being here and a part of the discussion. Next slide. All right. So go ahead, next slide. All right. So to get us started, Trent, you said a little bit about your district, where it's located in Indiana, how many students you all serve, and the grade. So this is just a little bit more information about what Jay School District, some of the information, the amount or the population of students, different programs that they offer. All right, next slide. All right, so let's get started. So Trent, can you discuss what a successful graduate looks like from a math perspective at Jay County Corporation?
Sure. One thing that we do in the revised process that you see on your slide here kind of sets the stage for our testing that we have. We will test in midwinter here. We're just finishing up with our fact. A few students are just finishing up with their algebra. We're done with it. I'd like to finish it up in January when we're done. One thing you'll see is that we do administer the paper pencil test. We have a large Amish population in our area. And so to keep it all consistent amongst the schools and everything, we do the paper pencil. Not that it has to be done that way. It can be done on an online version as well. But we do that, and it works easy. It's convenient for us. We like to do that in the 6th grade since our elementaries are K6. That's where we like to do it. We send the test results in, and it's quick to get the results back that we have. Once we get these results back, then we send them on to our middle school or junior high counselors, and they look at the test results. This helps them to look at students on what math courses they need to be going into. The 7th grade, we have regular math, and then we have a pre-algebra math course that students can take, and we look at the Iowa test to make sure, hey, do they really qualify to come into that course? That's the first criteria that we look at. Some of the other things we look at, just like some of the other schools, they have NWA, they might have some other assessments that they use in their programs. Look at iLearn. But the Iowa aptitude test really helps us out to determine what students really qualify for that pre-algebra class, and that we call the advanced math course for 7th grade. Once they're in that pre-algebra course in 7th grade, then that moves them on into 8th grade. Students are again looked at. If someone says, a parent says, you know, I think my student ought to be in that algebra class in 8th grade, which is fine. We look at that, and then parents are welcome to advocate for their students. We like for that to happen. And we'll look at their scores, what they've done in the past, whether it be, again, we go back to the algebra test because it is we feel it's a very important non-biased. It doesn't have any bearing on what the teachers do. It has all type of bearing on what the students, what they do. And so we look at that, and then we'll look at some other iLearn. We do, if the teacher wants to advocate a little bit for the student, that's fine. But the unbiased data that we have is that Iowa test that we use. So, and then it goes on in there to once we're done with 8th grade, they're algebra 1 or regular math in 8th grade. Then it goes on into, as a freshman, if they've had algebra as a 8th grader, they can just jump right on in geometry as a freshman. Do that. And then, of course, the incoming kiddos that are coming in their freshman year, then they're in algebra class. So kind of gives you a quick skeletal view on how we use the algebra test, different areas, different grade levels, where we use it at, and what method we use to administer the test.
Excellent. Thank you very much. All right. Let's see our next slide here.
Ashley, I guess one other thing I'd like to add
Yeah.
We like it because it's quick to administer. It doesn't take a long time to do it. And
Right.
it doesn't take days. In fact, you can do it for a class period and you're done and we get the results. So that's another plus that we like this Iowa test as well. It's quick, it's easy, and it gives us good data.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely.
Yes, thank you, Trent, for saying that. That is a great segue into what I was going to mention about why you would administer the Iowa Algebra Aptitude test. One of those reasons is, of course, that it is just 40 minutes. It can be done in one class period. It is nationally normed, so you can see how 6th, 7th, and 8th grade with 6th, 7th, and 8th graders, so you can see how they're doing comparatively across the nation. It is also there's a great correlation to Algebra 1 course grades. So the composite score on the IAT predicts how well a student will succeed in that first year algebra class. And then the higher the student's IAT composite score, in general, the higher the student's rate of success is in algebra. And success with the IAT is usually defined as a grade of C or better. But it really lets people know what students are ready to take algebra, if they have those problem solving and critical thinking skills that are necessary to be successful. If you don't have the necessary skills in algebra, you're a lot less likely to graduate high school. When Algebra 1 is taken, it really determines the highest attainable math course in high school, kind of like what Trent was just saying. Those kids that already are taking algebra in 8th grade, they're able to fast track and go right to geometry. So all of that are real benefits to the Iowa, and you can do paper pencil or online, as also Trent had mentioned. And there are 2 parallel forms. So even with those parents that are advocating for those students and saying that they need to be tested, or they don't think a test is accurate with one form, you have the ability to test them again with the second form that's equivalent.
Oh, thank you for that. Yes. All right, next slide.
Well,
All right,
I'm just gonna,
yeah,
oh, go ahead. Sorry, Ashley. I'm just gonna piggyback off of what both Rita and Trent said. And Trent, I love how you said that this was an objective test. That's one thing that we're really proud of at Riverside, is that we do have agnostic testing. We're not tied to any curriculum product or anything. So it really is a fair assessment of your students. So in addition to that, most achievement tests that we give in education are aligned to content standards that are specific to every grade level. But with the Iowa Algebra test, it was designed to not only assess skills that are required, but it goes multiple grade levels. So it really makes sure that we are hitting all of those skills over multiple grade levels to ensure success in algebra, like Rita just mentioned. And we don't just measure those essential concepts that are specific to 3rd grade, 4th grade, whatever it is. The alignment process of the Iowa Algebra test ensures that we are focusing on the desired outcome, which is success in algebra.
very good. Next slide, please.
So just to kind of explain a little bit more about the test, you really need to kind of know about the parts and why it really fits to knowing if your students are ready for algebra. So there are 4 different parts, and that helps a teacher diagnose a student's strengths and weaknesses. So part 1 is called the pre-algebraic numbers, skills, and concepts. And that is really measuring a student's understanding of those foundational skills needed for algebra. So it's assessing computational skills, working with integers and variables, and the ability to solve problems. It's capturing basic arithmetic. Most of those items align to the numbers and operations domain within the NCTM standards. Part 2 of the test is interpreting mathematical information, and it's really measuring that ability to read graphs, interpret given information, apply mathematical concepts using words and symbols, After each graph or definition is presented, then students are asked, to get an understanding of what they have read. And so it's going to mostly align with the NCTM standard of expressions and equations. And unlike part 1, where knowledge of foundational skills is tested, part 2 is requiring more generalized knowledge of math and how it all applies. Then part 3, each of these parts are 15 questions, and part 3 is called representing relationships. And that's assessing how a student can find formulas to numeric relationships. So some of the items present relationships in table form, and the student needs to find the rule for that relationship. The rules are usually involving 4 arithmetic operations and positive and negative numbers. The remaining items usually kind of also talk about interpreting and representing relationships in some type of a verbal, graphic, or symbolic form. And then the last part of the test is called using symbols, and those concepts tested include variables, orders of operation, consecutive integers, how the value of one variable in an equation equates to another. Some items are written specifically to test whether a student has an algebraic misconception about any of those items. Many of the items have a very high discrimination indices, indicating that better students nearly always respond correctly. Weaker students are going to respond more incorrectly. So the results really reinforce the research behind the test, and it's why it is a powerful predictor for success in algebra. So it's really capturing those foundational skills. And part 4 in itself is not an algebra test, just like part 1 isn't a pre-algebra test. But taken together, those 4 parts are really demonstrating if that student is ready to do that coursework.
Yeah, absolutely. Like talking about the foundational skills related to algebra readiness. I think that's really important. Thank you. All right, next slide, please. Okay, all right, so can you share about your systems and processes in place to analyze the data from IAAT?
Oh, I didn't hear that first. Was that to me?
Yeah, that was to you.
Okay, all right, Ashley, thanks. All right, so what we do when we get the results back in the spring, we definitely share those with the counselor at the, well, I guess we share them with the 6th grade teachers as well, so they know how their students did on the algebra test, because they would like to know before their students move on into 7th grade. But then definitely we take those scores and give them to our guidance counselor and also to the principal of the middle school, the junior high as well. So that way they can sit down and look at the scores, and also they have a math teacher that's going to be teaching that course at the junior high, have them come in and they're involved with that to really look at, okay, here's the scores where we're looking at. And sometimes when you look at the group of scores, we like a better words, we'll go down a little bit lower, because we want to make sure we have a full class in there. We just don't want 10 students in a classroom. We would like to have minimum 15 at least. That's still a small class, but we want to make it so it's comparable, so it's justified to have that class. Can we go down a little bit lower to obtain, in case we need to, some students, and when they start in that, going down that far, then they'll look at how well did a student do on, like I mentioned earlier, NWA. That's what we use. How did they score on previous ILEARN test? And then also, what do their grades look like on their report card? How well they've been successful in math courses in the past. So that's kind of what we use to, then to say, okay, this student is ready for more of the advanced math course as well. But in the end, we start out with the algebra test first as our first go-to, and then we start coming down the line a little bit. But those are the people that are part of that group that decide these students are going to be involved in this class moving forward.
Yeah, and I like how you said, like having those supporting pieces of data as well is important. Yeah.
Right.
Are there any particular reports that you find helpful when identifying students for algebra, or even if you're looking for skills for additional support?
Well, I think you have some of them listed here, and I mean that's a good area to start with on looking at those reports that come in. And I guess for maybe you want to explain a little bit more about those reports overall, what they mean. I know what I look at them like, but you might explain a little bit more about it as a whole group and coming from Riverside as well.
Oh yeah, definitely. Who wants to take that one?
Well, yeah, and otherwise, I will. Trent, we would like to hear from you and like what on the report, since you are primarily using the IAT to determine, and you're looking at other factors, which we highly suggest. But is there like a certain cut score that those teachers are looking at? Are you looking at a certain percentage of your population? Just to kind of help the rest of the districts know what seems to work out best for you with determining the students in the group besides.
Oh, and that's, I hate to say this, I'd rather like to come back with some more information on what has been done in the past with the teachers. I know, I mean, it's been, I hate to say it's been a year since we've done that, and every year we bring the new results back and look at that. And for the people that are on the attendees today, I'd be more than happy to come back and actually go through and give you like our, because I don't have that in front of me, but how do we cut this out? What's our parameters with those areas? I mean, I'd be more than happy to do that, but I really don't want to say, hey, we look at this percent right here and that's the only thing we do. I mean, if that's okay with you guys, I'd like to share that with Ashley, and then she can disseminate that to everybody else. That's okay.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
that is fine. And that again, like, is what we really recommend, that you look at other things. And so really you are answering the question, Trent, because you're looking at each year and student population differently. And so it's not set because you're looking at the local group as an individual group in each year. So that makes sense.
And I can give you what we've done in the past to give you some guidance. And so, but I just want to make sure that people that are on it say that's not at all inclusive of what we do. I mean, that's that parameter and that's it only.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, about what time in the year do you typically administer the IAT?
We like to do it here in January. That way, and we're playing catch up on some kids that have been absent and everything, but normally we're done at the end of January. Gives the kids a half year already in sixth grade math class. It gives them some information. And then once we get those results back, then we can give them to the junior high, because then they'll start scheduling students in classes here this spring so they know what their class schedule's like. Years ago, I mean, we thought, well, let's wait till the end of the year in May to give it, and that way the kiddos have a lot of knowledge in math and would be okay. Well, we did that once, because then we realized, well, that didn't help the junior high on scheduling classes, so we do it in January.
Okay, yeah, no, that's great. Thank you.
And Trent, then have you guys already done your testing for this school year?
Yes, we have them. We haven't got all the results back. I still have the school waiting to give their results back. In fact, while we're on our program for today, when the principal stopped by and held his box up by the window and said, like, here it is, and I knew exactly what it was. They're done. So they're by the door. So that was the last group. We had some makeups to do. So yeah. So I can't tell you anything results of how we did, but I know we're done.
And
they're ready to do it. I do think it's worth mentioning, your district uses paper pencil documents, correct? So, okay, right, because but we do have online option available as well. So, yeah.
And again, just to reiterate, the reason we do the paper pencil, we do it, like I said, we have a large Amish population up in the northern part of the county, and just so that it's a clean, we feel it's a clean playing field for everybody. Everybody gets the paper pencil. And that way we don't, I know there's not much difference in the end on the score, but just the mindset with our teachers and with the parents, everybody gets a paper pencil all the way through,
Mhm.
and it's assessed the same way.
Yeah, yeah. It's good to have the option, you know?
Oh, yes, yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
And even, and I will say this, our paper reports are great with just giving a general list of what our scores are. So if you want to know for each part and overall what their NPR is for those parts, it will tell you that. And that is a good indicator to know those strengths and weaknesses. But one of the advantages with online is that we have a ton more reports. And so you can drill down and it'll help the teachers know a little bit more on, with an item analysis, it measures it up, compares it to standards. And you have that option to actually print out the test. And so they could take it all paper pencil and fill out in a scannable score sheet and then send it back to our online, the online platform. And that way all the results will be in within 24 hours on the online platform. So there are alternatives also, even for those that, you know, I could understand that you want everybody to do it the same format, but there is another, there is an option also too, to get more enhanced reporting with the online. So
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, next slide, please. So going along with scores, Tina, could you kind of give us a little bit more insight on exactly what the scores mean and what they represent?
Yeah, sure. So these are not scores that any of you are going to say, oh, I've never seen that before, right? A lot of assessments give you these type of scores. But one thing I want to point out is that students do get an individual score per section, those 4 sections that Rita talked about a few minutes ago. They do receive a per section score as well as a composite score on the IAAT. And so here you can see that we have a raw score, standard score, percentile rank, stay 9, and a normal curve equivalent. We also provide you with national scores, which just gives you another point of comparison for your students. And I'm just reiterating what everybody else already said, but this is going to give you a quick view of what a student's algebra readiness skill is. And although the main use of this is for algebra readiness, you can also use this for acceleration of students or students who maybe are ready for more. Also to look at remediation of students. And one of the reports that we're going to talk about in just a minute shows you item by item what your students are already knowing and what they don't. And so making sure that those students who aren't quite there yet have the opportunity to get there. And Trent, I just want to say that I love how you are using this the way that it works for you. I taught in a school that we were the one school in the district that was different from the rest of the district, and having that freedom as an educator to do what works for us and year by year adjusting to make sure that the kids who are deserving of that acceleration are getting it. Kudos, that's wonderful to hear.
Well, thank you.
And Trent, if I can ask that also, just kind of going off of what Tina just had mentioned, is then why did you start using IAT? Was there, how is it solving a problem for you? You know, what were you looking for that you turned to the IAT?
I think a couple principals a while back asked about something a little bit different, and it goes back to what I said earlier. I mean, something that is really not tied to any other product out there that is going to be, okay, use this assessment, now you can use all this to go along with remediation. You can go with our curriculum and all that stuff, kind of an unbiased product. And also the simplicity of it as well, but yet it gives, we feel, good data for kiddos, and also unbiased, and it lets us, okay, we believe that by this score here or by the results from this assessment that we feel comfortable and positive by these kids need to be in the advanced math class, and these kiddos here probably not yet this year. They need another year in math before we move them up. So it's been a good non-biased instrument for us to use.
And earlier on too, I think you mentioned like the time frame that it takes to administer the assessment too was a plus as well.
with all the assessment that we got going on today that we have to do, it's nice to get one little quick assessment in a class period time, and we don't have to move it on to the next class or down the road. That's wonderful. That's wonderful.
I agree. Okay, next slide.
Yes, and that's actually a good plug for the next slide. On what you just said, was because the IAT it has the strongest readiness factor predictor with this exam. So correlations between the algebra readiness factor, the three things that have been looked at, relate to exam, their grade first semester, their IAT score, and overall like other placement and math grades overall. And the highest correlation is 0.98 with the IAT. And it's not surprising because it was designed to measure, if students are ready for algebra. And the correlation with semester grades is usually the lowest because grades are so influenced by non-cognitive and behavioral factors that are, more subjective. So I was just bringing this up because it really demonstrates that the readiness factor is a great predictor for future learning in algebra, and that difference between IAT and exam grades is attributable sometimes too to the new algebra skills that students are learning over a course of a semester, and that might not be tested in the IAT.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, let's look at the next slide, please.
And kind of going along with that, and I don't know, Trent, if you guys have looked at this further, but there is there's evidence regarding a relationship with algebra grades. And the higher, like I had mentioned earlier, the higher the composite score, the higher their grade tends to be in an Algebra 1 course. So like the values in the table show that if 89 students earned a score of 180 to 199, out of those 89 students, 53% of those received an A, 28% received a B. So you can see that the IA scores of 160 and above are associated with success in algebra. But sometimes districts, when they're trying to figure out that cutoff, and you're looking for that accelerated, program, and you want to move them up into a math course sooner, a C isn't usually what you would maybe want. So that's why I was kind of asking too about determining what scores you might use, because a lot of times a C to most people might not be success, especially if they're students who are advanced and they might not find that, well enough. You want maybe your students to be at that A or that B. So it really just kind of helps determine, based on that IAT, how successful they're going to be. And that's just kind of a nice indication on how it all correlates and shows.
Yeah, exactly.
Nice. That's nice.
All right, next slide, please. All right.
So this is one of my favorite reports, actually, and you can get reports within the IAAT EdPower platform at the administrator and the classroom level. This would be a great report for educators to use in their PLC or your teacher groups or whatever you're doing to analyze the data and use for differentiation. You can see on this report, which is a class item analysis report, that you can see the students' raw score there, and you can see their percentage correct. You can also see the standard that questions align to, and you can see which questions students got incorrect and how they answered them. So if you see a white dot there, that means that they answered the question correctly. The ones that have that little pinkish square that have a letter in it, that is a question that they answered incorrectly, and that's the answer that they chose. So when you're looking at differentiating or just providing some little additional support, this is a great way for you to see, like, oh my gosh, most of my class got this question wrong. I might need to go back and completely reteach that concept, or maybe I just need to do a little intervention with a few students. The other thing that I love about this report is at the very bottom, it tells you the most common distractor on that question and the percentage of your students that chose that distractor. So again, is that something that I need to go back and reteach the skill, or do we just need to go back in there and talk about what tripped them up and maybe what to do in the future? So, and this is another great way to utilize the way Trent was talking about that, you know, you can look at the kids that are almost there. And what was it maybe that just didn't quite get them there, and we still need to include them in that group of acceleration. Another way that I like to use this report, like I said, I was a former classroom teacher, and I'm sure, Trent, this doesn't happen at your school, but at my school, every once in a while, parents would say, you know, you're wrong. My child is completely ready to be in that accelerated class, and I need you to put them in there. And this is a great way for you to, you know, validate what they're feeling, but also maybe engage them as a partner and saying, you know what, you're right, they're very close, but here are some skills that really need to be nailed down before we can see success in that algebra class. And you can also refer to that information Rita was just saying, like, if we put them in now, they'll probably get a C. We don't want that. So if there are things that the parent would like to support you in through tutoring or extra things at home that they're doing so that that child can get up there, they can see exactly the skills that the student needs to improve on. And that way you can just have that parent be your partner in algebra. So.
Yeah, I think a key part, what you said, that it's a validation piece that you have, you can use, something that you can show parents or other teachers, you know, like, okay, here's what it is. And I really like the fact that it has the most common distractors. So, you know, instead of like, okay, well, they got this right, well, that's good. So they've mastered, you know, they understand that skill. But yet better, you can look at, okay, where is the misconception happening? What's going on? And you can look at that specific question or that specific answer that they gave and dive into a little bit deeper. Yeah, I like this report a lot as well. All right, next slide, please.
And this is another report that is usually also helpful for a lot of districts if they are online, with providing the point. It shows each standard that is being covered, how many points for that standard, and then also compares it to the class performance, and it provides a description of those standards, what questions link to those standards. So if you are digging in deeper or trying to give students some exposure to something that they don't know, it's a nice report to say, this is what they need to work on, this is what they need to work on as a class, and just helps overall with grouping.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. All right, next slide.
And this last report we're going to show you is, this is pretty self-explanatory. I can't even talk, explanatory. This is our ranked list of student scores, and you can see pretty easily on there, it's going to rank my highest kids in the class, and it goes in descending order. So my kids who scored in the 99th percentile, 97th percentile, and so on. It's going to show you their raw score and their national percentile rank score for each section. So again, just a really easy report for you to get the data that you need.
And I will say, this is
familiar, right?
Yeah, I'm sure. Yes, this is probably familiar more to you, Trent, because this is the report than that you get with the paper reporting.
That's correct. Yep.
Okay. So are you looking then at each overall and at each part?
This is the first area where we start with, and then when there's some that are on the borderline, or if the teacher knows a little bit about it, it's like, why is that? Then they go look at the other reports. So, is that what you're asking? Did I understand that question?
Yes.
Okay.
I was. Yeah. So you are looking at all the parts. You look at overall, and then you go down. I get it.
Right. Yeah.
Very good. Okay, next slide. All right. So, Trent, this is for you. What key insights have you discovered from data analysis of IAAT? So what key takeaways?
I think it's neat that after they give that test and then there's some areas that might be a little bit lacking, they can go back and look at, okay, what areas of the state standards in that algebra or that math that we might be a little bit lacking in, so we can help those kiddos out getting ready for the assessment for the next year. And anytime you do that, not only are you helping the kiddos with, success on this algebra aptitude test, but also just in math in general with the other assessments that are coming down the line. Also, it helps us to, I think, identify some of our kiddos that are high ability students that are doing well, and gives them a leg up to get some of those math classes in early, so that when they get to the high school level, they can take more of those advanced math classes their junior, senior year, whereas before they wouldn't be able to. They'd be starting a year later is what they would be doing. So
yeah, so it has a dual purpose, right? Yeah, I like that.
What's interesting, the picture you have on the screen, that's a picture of some students that were involved in our robotics team a while back. So that's pretty cool. That's neat.
Oh,
yeah, it's been a good, I guess, back on track again. It's been a good assessment for us, and it helps it does help the 6th grade teachers when they go back and look and see how the kids did on this assessment. It gives them an idea. It validates it'll validate what they're doing. That students are learning. So it's not always that we're looking for areas of improvement. It also is an area to look for validation that, you know what, we are doing something good. And so many times in education today, people kind of like to look at, okay, what are you doing wrong? What do you need to improve upon? Well, it's also nice to know, hey, what we're doing is good and it's going well.
Yeah, it has clear, concise data. It's easy to read and interpret. Yeah.
Right. It is. The reports, as we saw here earlier, the reports are easy to read, to look at, to understand, and I guess that should be another plus for doing this assessment as well. Yep.
Okay, go to our next slide. Funding. That's big, always on everybody's mind, right? So obviously, different types of funding that you could use or that are available. Title I. So you think about what we were talking about, the different uses of this assessment. Title I, academic needs of low achieving and low income students, right? So using this assessment for Title I funds, you could absolutely use that. Title II, improving teacher instruction and professional development, that hits that as well. Let's see, Title III, providing enrichment activities for all students. Here we go, looking at the key concepts that they have grasped and what maybe they need extra practice on. And then expanding opportunities, another one, increasing access to STEM and career-based opportunities. So by placing those students on a pathway that is best for them, definitely gives those students a better opportunity. And IDEA is services for students with disabilities. So lots of different choices. And of course, grants are available as well. Right. Let's see. Next slide, please.
Ashley, before we go on, I just wanted to mention too, high ability funds can be used as well. Although I know a lot of folks think about using it for COGAT, which is great, but it also can be used for IAAT as well.
And that's where we use our funding for this comes from with the high ability grant. We use that, and that's where the other grants piece down at the bottom on this slide comes into play, where we stick that cost into the high ability area.
Right. All right. So what questions, if you have any, please feel free to type it into the chat that we can answer for you today. And again, if you have questions later on, feel free to email one of us and we'll be happy to get back to you. Like I said, we will be emailing you the PowerPoint presentation as well as the handouts to you in the next couple days. So make sure to look for that in your email.
Ashley, we do have a couple questions. One, talking about the teachers in looking at the data, how often are they maybe working in collaborative PLC type sessions and things to look at it.
For me, that question is probably for me. So when we get the data back, we look at it with the teachers that as they're going into 7th grade, what students are more apt to be in that advanced math class. So do we use it on a, like, every month moving forward? I honestly can say we probably don't. We probably don't use it as much as what we could use it as. Utilize it. We mainly use it for seeing if those kiddos are able to be in the pre-algebra class in 7th grade. Also, to go back and look at it in, are those students, we got the right students in algebra in 8th grade? Are there some students that we missed to bring up? But to say that it's used a lot more in depth, I would say no, we don't.
Right.
Not that you can't, but we don't.
But that's how you use it, right? Yeah. Okay.
Correct.
And then I know there's an option for pre-post with IAT. Have you ever given that to your students in a pre-post fashion, or?
No. We just do the one assessment, and that's all we do.
Okay.
And then we had another question about costs for IAT.
The cost I can't answer. That's more of a, I think.
Yeah, Rita,
someone else. Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, there are a couple of different options actually, because there is always the paper pencil option, and I am going to have to double check that one because I am remembering last year's pricing. For the online assessment, however, I can tell you that that is $7.95 a student. There is a one-time setup fee with EdPower, which is $9.95. But after that initial year, you're only going to be focused on basically purchasing student licenses because you've already purchased the setup.
Yeah.
And I'll double check the cost of the paper pencil when we finish up here today, and we'll get that information for you.
Yeah, thank you.
That's what was in the chat, in the question. So
Awesome. Okay, all right, next slide, one more. All right, well, thank you again for taking time out of your day and joining us. I want to say a big thank you to Trent.
You're welcome. I appreciate it.
I appreciate you coming and sharing all of the way that you use IAT and some insight. I really appreciate that. So we'd like to know how other districts, if you do use IAT, like, please share. You can, we have different social platforms, tag us on social media. We would love to hear from you. So yeah, and let's see, do we have anything else that we'd like to add?
No, I don't.
Well, thank you so much.
Welcome to ask or ask questions later. That's fine. No problem.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Well, everybody, thank you for coming. Please enjoy. Have a good rest of your day. Eat up the rest of your Valentine's Day candy if you have any. So thank you so much for coming.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.